Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Make yourselves comfortable. So, we're talking about applying yoga in your daily life. This is like the huddle. Yoga class is like the huddle. And that's the game out there. The way you apply yoga in making your life richer and fuller and benefiting other people and helping this planet along. That's the main idea of yoga. It's not learning beautiful things, it's living beautiful things. So that's what our nights are about, applying yoga again and again. And we began last week saying that yoga is harmony of your body, your mind, and your spirit, or your core consciousness, your essence. And that's half the definition, because the other half is yoga is harmony between yourself and the universe, the infinite consciousness. So yoga is harmony of body, mind, and spirit. Yoga is harmony between you and other people. Harmony that you strive to establish in your society, in your world, in your neighborhood, in your house, very important. All these dimensions, that's what yoga is. That's the definition of yoga that's really old and long-term. Yoga is thousands of years old. A lot of people want to do yoga is harmony of body and mind. That's do not understand what it is, because also it is a discovery of your essence and enjoying that essence and letting it express through you. So we got into that and we talked about all these different levels where we express harmony or experience harmony, both by doing harmony at the physical level, the pranic level, the mental emotional level, and the egoic level. You know, your sense of self is your sense of well-being constant? Do you have this harmonious state that easily acknowledges the rights and the value of other people? Or are you desperately narcissistic, thinking I, me, mine, and let other people take care of themselves? You know, it's very important you have a sense of self that accommodates other people and other possibilities and growth on your own part. So we were really having fun getting into that. We talked about all kinds of ways to have spiritual experiences, yogic experiences. And so tonight, our theme is, as a result of that, as a result of developing harmony, you begin to sense the little me inside this skin and the big me, or your universal self, beyond the skin. Little me, big me. And there's this wonderful discovery as you practice harmony, as you practice yoga, of discovering your consciousness is not just in this little bottle. You have a consciousness that's vast. We call it the superconscious life or higher consciousness. But there's this amazing amount of consciousness that you have and I have beyond our skins. This is not meant to be a border. So we would normally sing, but because I ran out of time last week, if we have time at the end, we'll sing. But I want to get everything in, and then if we have time, we'll sing, okay? What I'm saying now is hopefully not bragging. I want to encourage you to have a whole bunch of experiences. When you find this little me and you harmonize body, mind, and spirit, and you begin to discover that you have a vast consciousness too, all kinds of nice things start to happen to you. And these are awakenings. You begin to understand, I'm not just the person stuck in this body. I am the consciousness that's not only in this body, I am this consciousness that surrounds the body and can go pretty far, very far. So what I'd like to do is just share experiences I've had. I'm talking about a long time ago because I live in kind of an amazing life. But starting out, I was just trying to figure out which way is up and what it all means and where do I go from here and what's the point of life. Is everything we do just merely expedient, or does it have some meaning and possibility to it, you know, some good use? So I first became exposed to yoga in my hometown. A friend went away to chiropractor school in Davenport, Iowa. She came back and she was all excited about yoga because they were talking about yoga a great deal in a chiropractic school. How health is this free flow of energy and consciousness in the spine. So she introduced me to foot baths and wonderful conversations, and we had fun practicing meditation together. And well, it was just a wonderful time in life. She was trying to encourage me to become a chiropractor. I was thinking about it. She taught me that if you meditate in this area here, you can see light. And I thought that would be interesting. And I began, as a result of those first exposures to yoga, to see brilliant light in my head. How is it possible you've got brilliant light in your head? So that was an experience that represented an awakening to me. I'm hoping you are going to think back, what are my awakenings? What has revealed itself to me as something quite interesting and quite beyond what natural science says? What is it that I'm experiencing, and what does it mean? Okay, so that's the first experience, light in the head. And went off to Arizona and started studying at Arizona State in Tempe, which is about 14 miles outside of Phoenix, Tempe. I was a member of a church. In fact, a minister drove me all the way down from Camrose, Alberta, down to Utah. Then he had to run back in order to do his Sunday sermon. Just did halfway, put me down there in Utah with his friends in Ogden, and then away he went and gave his sermon. And I got on the bus and met his friend, who was a friend in his seminary. And so I was passed from minister to minister. And I was a member of the student religious organization there. And I was still very interested in yoga and spirituality. So I ended up in this organization, student organization, and the president was a friend of mine, and his dad was a minister, and the counselor, who was kind of representing the church to the youth, he was also thinking about becoming a minister. Both of them were every day doing some yoga. They wanted to have deeper spiritual experiences, deeper experiences of life and of their essence. And so they recommended to me Christian yoga by Deschanel, who was a monk in France. And so I'm reading this book. And it's a wonderful book. And I'm really having fun studying it, but it's kind of mind-blowing what this guy is saying. He said, if you don't have any will, if you don't wish harm on any person or any creature, they will not try to harm you. And he said the yogis call it ahimsa, just have an attitude of not wishing to harm anyone. And in return, even lions probably spare you, you know. I put in probably there. But I had a chance to be fascinated by this. And a friend lent me his apartment, but he asked, would I please live in it and maintain it while he went away? So this was a new apartment right out there in the desert, outside the university, about a mile, and it was full of scorpions. I mean, it was full of scorpions. So I'm busy thinking, I can really prove this Deschanel idea. I can see if it's true here for sure. Because in my bedroom, the one wall had varying at times, 30 to 50 scorpions just standing there, watching light go by. Big scorpions, little scorpions, of course centipedes and all kinds of those creatures too, you know. So I thought, well, I don't wish them harm. I really don't. We'll see how this goes. they stayed there and they did not attack. They were just happily staying there, and when they walked along the floor, they kind of pranced, you know? they like to dance, these scorpions. And so one morning I woke up, my eyes open, and there's a scorpion about 4 inches away, prancing by. You don't want to roll over on one because it can really sting you. A friend of mine lost all his money doing an off-Broadway theater in New York. And so he was working in the library trying to pay the government back $400,000 of back taxes. And he had a girlfriend who worked with scorpions, a leading scorpion expert. As far as we knew, the world's leading expert on scorpions, Dr. Stunke was his name. He was an official and he knew all about them. So this young lady worked with him, and one day a German scorpion, she had it in this little bag. It just reached out of the bag and went, and she got really sick. She got really hurt from this scorpion. So she wanted to see this guy who was living with scorpions. So she came by, and the two of them, the off-Broadway fellow, and this young lady who was categorizing and working with scorpions every day, she walked me through the wall and said, no, these will make you sick for about a week. And these, though, the littler ones, they can really give you a lot of trouble. So she told me, and interestingly, the little ones are just more perky. You know? So I lived with scorpions 2 months and had no problems with them whatever. They were just very peaceful and joyful, actually, I think. They seemed quite joyful in their little hippity hops around my bed, you know. I was just very lucky I didn't roll over on one. But I discovered that was an awakening. You don't wish them ill. They don't wish you ill. 2 months of a friendship with these scorpions, you begin to like them. And you think, they're wonderful creatures. So that was a breakthrough for me. I wandered a couple years out to the East Coast and back. So then I came back to Arizona and worked in Phoenix as a reporter for Arizona Weekly Gazette, a law and business newspaper. And while there, I got more fully into yoga and mysticism, which is kind of a form of Western yoga. Mysticism is discovering there are higher levels of consciousness beyond the normal thinking mind. And so yoga is a kind of mysticism too. We believe we experience higher levels of consciousness beyond the normal thinking mind. So there were a whole bunch of wonderful people I met who were studying, practicing mysticism out there in Phoenix. And we would get together after our meetings and have a wonderful time. Our meetings were wonderful too, but the first time I got an invitation to go, I just wanted to go to that address. I got on the bus and I went down there and I couldn't find the building. So I was a law and business reporter, so I'm familiar with phoning police. I just phoned the police, said, I can't find this building. He said, oh, it's behind those other buildings. You know, it's behind there. So I found the building and I was too late with all the getting lost and everything. So I just opened the main door and there they were already in session. And I saw a lady doing chanting of single vowels. And I saw the first halo I've seen in my life. I thought halos were what artists did. You know, they'd put these things to signify holiness or something above somebody's head. But I saw a lady surrounded by light with a perfect halo on top of her head. I was amazed. And then the guard got me and said, I can't let you in now. I can't let you in now. And pushed me out there. And so there was an overturned garbage can out there. I sat on this garbage can and waited for them to open up. And when they did, oh, you're one of us. And then they turned out the lights and checked my aura. I knew what they were doing. But it was just a fascinating thing to see that those circular things can exist. For me, it was an awakening, you see. I saw something I didn't know existed, and there it was. Now, I was seeing it spiritually or mystically or superconsciously, but to me, it was an awakening. People can have halos. There are people walking the earth with halos. That was pretty fascinating. As I got to know these guys, very often we would go to the only available place after a meeting's over. Guess where? A tavern. We went to a tavern, and I got to meet some of these wonderful mystics, just sit and chat with them. And at one point, I had a cold, and I said, well, I don't want to give you guys my cold. Oh, stay. We're not going to get your cold. We won't. And so I stayed, and then one of the guys said, I can help you with that if you want me to. And I said, yeah, go ahead. And he just put his thumb here. And it normally takes me about 10 days to go from sore throat to sore chest to coughing and spitting and sore nose from blowing my nose. And it takes about 7 to 10 days. Well, this took 1 minute. I was just healing, just poured in and filled my whole body, especially my head and my chest. And that was an awakening. That was something that happened that just doesn't seem normal. It seems beyond the normal. It seems to involve a vast self expressing in my little self that had the cold. It seemed like some higher consciousness, awareness, energy just moved. And so these guys really got my attention with that. And they taught me some other things that were really interesting because I was of a poor consciousness. I was thinking, I'll give money when I've got some surplus. And they said, you've got that all wrong too. Because they were friends. They could say things like that to me. I was willing to learn, eager to learn. They said, the secret of prosperity is start today and look upon yourself as a giver, not a desperate person who needs money. It's called the law of Amra, A-M-R-A. Have the attitude that you are giving from your abundance and you live in an abundant world and you are giving from that abundance. And every day, probably in the evening when you clean out your pockets, give some money to some cause where you think you're helping the world. And in my case, it was textbooks for really poor people. I wanted them to have a chance to learn. So when I built up like $30, $40, $50 from just daily giving, I was able to find I changed my consciousness from I'm not well off, how am I going to make it, to I am a prosperous being who is supporting and sustaining this world, and I give from a source that is infinite and is expressing through me in this way right now. And so I began to change my whole view of prosperity. Have enough to give. Look upon whatever you got, give something of it. And it's best at first, especially, give secretly. When you send it off, don't let anybody know what you're up to. Just be a daily giver. And so I've always had these bowls in which I put change or other amounts of money, and then I find a cause, someone to give it to help along. And I don't tell people that I'm giving. But as a result of this change in consciousness, again, I grew a lot from fearing lack to enjoying being a giver. And from that day on, through these buddies, I began to think of myself as having enough and giving and giving and giving daily. So that's a real fun thing to learn. Another thing they taught me was mind may be subtle, but the mind influences matter. And it's important for us to understand and awaken to our mind being able to influence matter. And the first thing was incense. You've got this stick of incense burning. Influence it, look at it, tune in with big me, your vast self. Just feel I'm not just this little person encased here. I am this vast self. And I thought of it, if I first asked permission, may I, learn, if it's appropriate, this truth that mind and matter do relate and that mind can direct matter. And so I would ask that the incense go over here. And then that'd go over here. And if it was going some particular direction with some energy, I'd ask it to go that other way. And so starting with incense smoke, which is a very light thing, I began to find mind influences matter. It's subtle, but it can make it move. My mind could direct this incense to go, the smoke of it to go this way or this way, and back and forth and back and forth. So the next thing I learned in terms of awakening is something a little more hard to do, a pendulum. Have a string and put a little weight on the bottom of it, suspend it somewhere in front of you, and just ask it to move. And ask it to stop. And ask it to move this way. So what happens is you begin to find that your consciousness has an influence on this little pendulum, but perhaps other things as well. My goodness. And then you work with little objects like toothpicks, but you can awaken to the mind and matter connection. So that was really wonderful. While I was in Phoenix too, my brothers, mainly because the group that sat there after the meeting was usually a bunch of guys sitting around at a table in a bar, and they had the Lowenbrau and I had the 7-Up, because I'm a child of an alcoholic, so I didn't want to mess with alcohol. And they felt perfectly comfortable doing Lowenbrau. Anyway, as a result of sitting there and chatting with them, I was inspired. They really wanted CC. CC means cosmic consciousness. When you have an expansion of your awareness and realize spirit or conscious energy everywhere. One of them, the guy who was the head of the group at that time, was a fascinating man. He had CC, cosmic consciousness, and the other two of our group that met there till 1 o'clock in the morning were really pining for it. I began to have several expansions over the next few months, just feeling my being expand, and then once it just really went. And I experienced this cosmic consciousness. And it was just wonderful. If you want to know what that's like, read the book by Buck, B-U-C-K-E. Buck, he was a doctor, a mental health doctor up in Canada a long time ago. And in the time of Walt Whitman. If you read the book Cosmic Consciousness, you can understand what they're talking about. But that again was an awakening. As a result of that experience, began to have bliss, a lot of bliss, just ecstasy going on in my bones and bone marrow, and just this delight of being alive. That's another awakening. And that experience lasted for 3 months, and then it just kind of petered out. So that was quite interesting too, that you think you got it and it goes away. I guess that's a growth experience. Went off to San Jose to study with the mystics, and also there was a great yogi there. I was hoping to get my experience of cosmic consciousness back. That would have been so nice, but I was having difficulty having that. However, I was learning that your picture of life is so important. And I was taught creative visualization. I arrived in town with a list of 40 things that I pictured as if they were happening. I pictured them happening to me. And you learn this in this first year, Yoga Center. As a result of this picturing, I was able to fill in that list. I got a wonderful place to live, wonderful people to live with. And I was just a short distance from the mystical order that was there in San Jose. I pictured a nice job where I was radio announcing again, and I was. That was nice. Just all kinds of wonderful things happened. About 6 months later, I was expecting the little conference that gives you a raise because I was told that was going to happen. And my boss seemed to be avoiding me, like he didn't want to give me a raise or he didn't want to see me. So I told one of my mentors in the mystical organization, I said, he's avoiding me. He doesn't want to, give me what he said he would do, a raise after 6 months, etc. And so I was really embarrassed because my mentor said, well, did you picture it happening? And I had forgotten to picture it. So I pictured we're sitting down, having a wonderful conversation, and I'm getting my raise. And that's exactly what happened right away. So creative visualization is very helpful. If you picture what you want to happen instead of what you fear is happening or what you don't want to happen, that picture goes out into the vast self too. That picture very often is creating problems. Picture what you would like to happen, not what you are afraid is happening. Picture what you would like to happen. So that was very helpful. That was another awakening. When I arrived in San Jose, I didn't know what happened exactly because I just got settled in my new pad and I'm walking down the street like this and I'm trying to go just to the end of the street down to the mystical organization. And I end up walking kind of like this. And there was a guy raking leaves and I ended up just standing right next to him. He said, "Hi, I'm Harvey Miles." Harvey Miles is one of the world's leading mystics. But I tell you, I'm just walking like this, and I'm just going like this. It was wild, And he became my buddy, and he was retired. He became my gym coach. He used to call me Coconut. And he'd always say, "Chop, chop, Coconut, chop, chop." But he was a great guy. It was really fun to know Harvey Miles. And he did all kinds of fascinating things. I used what I learned as a mystic to do better radio. Our ratings were very poor. You pay a bunch of people like Hooper and some other people, but this was Hooper rating. You pay them every month to tell you how badly you're doing in listenership. But if you're doing well, you can take those ratings out and charge your clients more because you're reaching more people. So after maybe half a year or so of being on the air, my boss called me in, said, "Look at this. We had next to no ratings here. And now, during your shift, we've got just these huge number of people listening." So it can have a very practical value. And my secret was mystical. It had to do with this vast self. The secret was, mystics particularly think, love radiates. And I thought, may this love in me spread out over the entire broadcast radius. And I knew exactly where the air program reached. And I filled it with love. And may I serve you today. And so I always began my shift with love. And how may I serve you? May I serve you today? And our ratings just went up and up and up. It was an incredible thing. One of my programs, Saturday Night Dance Party, had a higher rating than all the other radio stations in the San Francisco Bay Area combined. Just love and let love work. Anyway, those were growth experiences. Those were awakenings. What I'm saying is you need, if you want to do this well, you need to sense the reality of the interplay you're having with the universe, with your job, with your family, with your neighborhood. You need to be aware of the interplay between little you and big you. So let's see. Well, San Jose was great, and I was having a wonderful time, and I was being offered lots of wonderful things. I was offered 3 of my own radio stations if I wanted to run them. One of them, an Hispanic radio station, and I didn't know Spanish, you know. But they offered me to run a Spanish radio station, which was quite interesting. So at that time, I was saying to my buddy that I meditated with a lot, I don't want to, we're visiting higher consciousness, and it's great. I love to visit it, but I don't want to just visit it. I want to live in it, you know? I want to live in this. I don't want to just kind of be kicked out all the time. I want to stay in it. Isn't there a way? And he said, well, I met this yoga teacher. I think you're going to have to come back to yoga again. And so eventually, after 2 years of radio, I felt an urgency to go into silence. I was tired of talking, tired of hearing myself talk. I went 5 months of silence in the Sierra Nevadas at Swami Kriyananda's meditation retreat called Ananda. There are some wonderful experiences there too that, again, they are awakenings. When I arrived at my beautiful meditation place, put down my 9x12 tent, got all ready to have adventures, a bee. Just first meditation, a bee landed on my eyeball. And I thought, please go. I didn't wish it harm, I wished it go elsewhere. And you know, it was doing something to me, just kind of needing it or something. So I said, well, this is going to be so strange. I give up my job, I get up here with a tent, I put everything together, and now I'm going to be stung in the eye and have to go back to the city, you know? This is kind of preposterous. I decided, where would I rather have a bite, on the eye or the hand? So I put my hand up like this, offering the bee my hand. And it said, okay. And it continued doing that thing. I realized it was eating my suntan cream. I was delicious. So it just worked away. And from that day on, the bees and I were friends. And I used to drink tea, herb tea, of course. It was my little open-air kitchen. And the bees would just come and sit on the rim of the cup while I drank. And they'd fall in, and I'd have to dry them out. And we had all kinds of exciting adventures. Had a nice snake there that used to sit and sunbathe with me, just kind of lie out there. The squirrel also liked to do that kind of thing. Now and then, the squirrel and the snake would have different ideas about life. So one morning I'm sitting there, I'd been meditating all night, and let's see, the snake was here, the squirrel was here frozen, and I came out of meditation, what's going on? And the snake was ready and considered me a friend. And the squirrel was scared to death and considered me a friend. So I just put my hand between them, and the snake did a loop in the air and went off really fast that way. Wow. So you have all these wonderful experiences that are awakenings. It was there that I began to have spiritual sight and see trees full of essence, full of light, especially at sunrise and sunset. It was there in the summer of 1969 in the woods that I experienced a permanent awareness of spirit, which is called by yogis enlightenment. And it was just wonderful and so worthwhile. And it just was an awakening based on all kinds of other awakenings. So, let's see, what else should I say about that? A buddy of mine, the same buddy I referred to earlier, he was having a divorce, and he was weeping all the time, and he couldn't stop weeping. And he'd asked all kinds of people to pray for him and give him help and guidance. But he couldn't stop, so he wrote me a letter in the woods. People are trying to help me, but I can't stop crying. could you please help me stop crying? And so I just kind of prayed for him, and it happened just like that. Because our consciousness can be elsewhere. It doesn't have to just be here. So, that all happened before I came here in 1970. And what I'm saying, and why I'm saying this, is you need a similar book, a blank book, and fill in what you've already experienced, what awakenings you've already had to the reality of spirit, the reality of your inner self. You need to have a bunch of awakening experiences that you can see as simply and clearly as these. Expect yourself, if you're practicing harmony and you're thinking of harmonizing little me and big me, your little self inside this body and your vast self, and you're practicing harmony, be on the lookout for experiences that are awakening. And be able to tell, maybe just tell it to the mirror or whatever, but you need numerous awakening experiences. And you can have them if you practice harmony and create a harmony between little me and big me. Is that clear? You need your book. I got a book. You need a book. You need to allow yourself to have 100 or 1,000 awakenings. It's essential because awakening is progressive. And as a result of those things, of course, every day some beautiful things happen in my life. Some amazing things happen because you're aware of this energy or consciousness. But you have to wake up to it. So are there any questions about this? Yes?
You have to write them down.
Well, they should be strong enough that you don't have to write them down, but I recommend you write them down because it'll please you to see how many you have. You know, if you don't write them down, you think you have 3, but chances are you have 500. Just write down these glimpses, brief experiences or understandings that are going to be the foundation of your having higher consciousness. So I do recommend you write them down, but don't tell anybody. It should be private, because once you tell people, then they think, oh, you're special. Or maybe you think, I'm special. Rather than I am a being who is unfolding. So don't tell anybody. Like I'm telling people what happened now to help people out. This all happened before 1970. So I'm not into after 1970, but it didn't stop there, you know. It helps. It really helps. Okay? Well, good.